Wherever you are in the world, welcome to another edition of one of my takes on China, but not really China this time, about the US. I often say China manages our behavior while the West profits from our misbehavior. And this accounts for why people think it's a police state here in China. We are discouraged from breaking laws. But in the West, they don't bother to discourage you. They just arrest you, fine you, lock you up, and sometimes make you work for free. This was brought to my attention a few days ago when I read a report that Derek Chauvin, the man who killed George Floyd, which started all of the big protests, was stabbed in prison. Now, we've all watched Hollywood movies about how bad US prisons are, and to be honest, even I question that they could possibly be as bad as all that. Surely there aren't stabbings every day in the prison system. There aren't rapes and other sexual offenses committed on such a regular basis. But then I found that by their own admission, it really is that bad. This is not the prison or even the prisoner's fault. This is the fault of a rotten and corrupt system. A 2018 report showed that prisons are, quote, death-making institutions in the US. And according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, it's getting worse. It's not getting better. 120 deaths in 2018 increased to 143 in 2021. And around 20% of the people in US prisons have reported some violence or sexual assault. And that's people reporting them. Remember, these are prisoners. They're not likely to go to the police to make a complaint. So prisonpolicy.org reports that the numbers could be and probably are significantly higher. Prisonpolicy.org is an interesting site to look for information and statistics on the US prisons. But a surprising fact that I found was that the private prison system is not the root cause of the problems. I expected that locking people up and managing their lives for profit would be a big part of the US system. But then I learned that it's not. It's only 7% of the total number of prisoners. Not prisons, prisoners. The website, quite rightly in my opinion, describes private prisons as a parasite on the system, not the cause of the problems within it. Strangely though, we hear mostly about problems within the system as being in the privately run facilities, as if the federally and state-owned prisons were better. If prisonpolicy.org are to be believed, they are definitely not. There were, as of 2019, only 411 private prisons holding 8.2% of the total population of prisoners. And this has reduced since COVID to 7%. Apparently in 2023, only 134,000 prisoners were held in private prisons. So the system isn't the problem. What is? It starts with the judges. Record amounts are spent getting judges elected, including to the Supreme Court, where they are nominated. There was still many millions spent in getting people like Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett onto the Supreme Court. And this money is spent by people we don't know who they are. For example, the highly conservative Judicial Confirmation Network. But it goes all the way down the line in the judicial system. Judges in 38 different states are required to stand for election. And in the most recent cycle of elections, this amounted to $97 million being spent. There's little doubt that, as with senators and congressmen now, that it's costing that much to get elected. The interest groups are the ones making the donations. And of course, some of them are operators of private prisons. Judges involved in decision-making, where private correctional facilities are located, are more likely to add longer sentences towards the end of their term than they are at the beginning. And this fact was established by facingsouth.org. Interestingly, they also found that judges sentenced Black Americans to an average of 6 months more than white Americans. But that is a different story. Inside of prisons, the rot goes even further, much deeper. And surprisingly again, there's a myth that prisoners are used for slave labor. I always thought that, but this is not always the case. Only about 1% of all prisoners take part in a scheme which allows federal prison labor to be used by private companies. But this is a small scheme. under which they are entitled to minimum wage before deductions. About 6% are used in the kind of systems that we read about and believe, where they work for pennies but have jobs that should be done by factory workers or farmers. These are voluntary and probably sought after, even though they pay peanuts, but they do pay more than the next category. The real problem is that prisoners are required to work within the prison system. Cooking, cleaning, laundries, libraries, teaching jobs. These jobs that pay as little as 86 cents per hour. But what makes this system evil is that not so much of the low rates of payment, it's that the services they need, such as phone calls, hygiene items, even medical expenses, are deducted. The average cost of a 15-minute phone call in a federally managed penitentiary is $3.75, or about the same as an 8-hour day's work there. The same thing applies in a prison commissary, the equivalent of a local convenience store. Prices are marked up on average by 64%, meaning a packet of instant noodles costing 25 cents outside the prison sells for more than $1 inside the prison. One of the reasons given for the high prices is to limit the flow of desirable commodities in the prison's black market. In other words, it's okay for the prisons to make an obscene profit, but not the prisoners. Selling items such as soap, toilet paper, this is one way they use of shifting the cost of incarceration onto the general public, as most prisoners would rely on donations from outside to top up their commissary accounts. And there you have it, a system that is designed to thrive on profit, some parts of it contracted out, but all of it aimed at making money rather than rehabilitating, which might account for why Harvard University found that 2 out of every 3 prisoners released was rearrested, and 50% of them ended up back in prison. Once back in prison, they fall back into the same old system. Once again, thanks for watching another of my takes on China, albeit that this one really wasn't about China at all. Hope to catch you next time. See you then.